Well, outside of tariffs, another major issue defining the early days of the second Trump administration is immigration. Today, lawyers for Kilmar Abrego Garcia were in court. He's the man who lived in Maryland illegally and who was deported to El Salvador, where he's being held with violent gang members. On Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered that he must be returned to the United States because he was mistakenly deported. The Trump administration said that it can't force El Salvador to return him. Meanwhile, in Vermont, a Palestinian student at Columbia University has been arrested by U.S. agents during a scheduled citizenship interview. Mohsen Mahdawi is a permanent U.S. resident and has been active in campus protests supporting Palestinian rights. His arrest echoes the case of Mahmoud Khalil, a green card holder who is also facing deportation for protesting the war in the Middle East. Joining us now to discuss these issues is Andrew Arthur, resident fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Eric. It's great to be here.
Well, first of all, I want to focus on the Garcia's case. On Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered that the administration must facilitate Garcia's return to the U.S., but as you heard, the administration says the U.S. court can't compel a president to force another country to return a prisoner. So what happens next?
That's a great question, Eric, because this is a situation in which we have a fight between the executive and the judicial branch over an issue, diplomacy, that the Constitution places squarely in the hands of the president. The court can, certainly ask that he attempt to bring them back, that he uses diplomatic efforts. But we saw President Bukele of El Salvador in the Oval Office yesterday talking about how, he had no way to bring this guy back to the country short of smuggling him in. And Mr. Abrego Garcia is actually a citizen of El Salvador. He's back in El Salvador. He's in the custody of his own government. So it's not entirely clear how, even if a court wants it to happen, that the administration could force that to occur.
Now, could a judge actually hold the president in contempt of court over the issue?
Sure, but to enforce that contempt order, it would require the assent of the Attorney General, as I remember it from law school. And the Attorney General in this case, Pam Bondi, is very unlikely to hold her, to take any action against her boss. So, this is one of those situations in which the court can demand something that happen and bring, moral suasion to the issue. But, in terms of force, there's not much that the courts can do.
And what about the other case, the two Colombian students with temporary protected status? The president says that he's fighting extremist ideology. Is that enough to detain them?
Well, when it comes to, First Amendment rights, the First Amendment rights of people who are here in, some sort of immigrant status, the courts have never really weighed in that heavily on what rights those individuals do have. It's commonly accepted that they don't have the full rights of citizenship, but they do have some rights. The question becomes when, the expression of statements starts to adversely impact the foreign relations of the United States. In the case of Mahmoud Khalil, who is the Columbia graduate student who was arrested and is now being detained in Jena, Louisiana, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, determined that his presence in the United States undermined the commitment of the United States to anti-Semitism and to protecting Jewish students in our country. It's a pretty strong argument. I think it's going to be very difficult to contradict that. But yeah, the real question is the Constitution is not entirely clear. Right. The courts have never really spoken that strongly. So this one's going to play out in the courts. We'll see how it comes out.
Yeah, play out in the courts and then ultimately end up possibly in the U.S. Supreme Court, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. I wrote just yesterday that I anticipate that Mr. Khalil's case will be headed back to the Supreme Court. I think that it's going to make some law that's going to be very effective. It's going to be the sort of case that, our grandchildren, if they go to law school, will talk about 100 years from now. But it will at least answer the question. I think that a lot of what the Trump administration right now is trying to do is to try to figure out what the rules are. For years, courts of the Congress have taken a walk on this. It's time that everybody weigh in so we can figure out what's going on.
Andrew Arthur, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much, Eric. Greatly appreciate it.